ask people to introduce themselves in the chat. I don't know if Roy is planning on it, but just ask them to put their name in the chat window so we know who all's here.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Indiana Department of Transportation's INDOT's Public Information Meeting for the fiscal year 2024-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. This document is commonly referred to as the STIP, S-T-I-P, and we'll probably refer to it as the STIP for the rest of this program to make things easier. My name is Jay Mitchell. I am the supervisor of the technical planning section at INDOT. And with us today, we have Roy Nunnally, who is the director, of the Technical Planning and Programming Division of INDOT. And he will be providing a brief presentation. During that presentation, we will occasionally stop the presentation and then open the floor up for a brief question and answer period, and then continue with the presentation until the end. Once we finish the presentation, we will then open the floor up for any questions or comments that might come in. We are here today to receive public comment on the STIP itself. We're actually looking for your comments on the STIP. If you have specific questions about specific projects in the STIP, we will take those questions. If we happen to know the answers to the questions for the panel that's here today, we'll answer those immediately. If not, we will try to research in the background with some of our INDOT personnel and get the answer and get that answer out to you before the end of the meeting. However, if it is something that we cannot get the answer to today, we will make sure that we have your question posted in the actual STIP document itself, plus the answer when it's submitted to our federal highway partners for review and completion. And that will again be posted on our website at INDOT, just to let you know. A little bit of description about the STIP itself. What is the STIP? STIP is the Transportation Improvement Program for the state of Indiana. What this entails is any project that will involve public funding with federal transportation funds, be that federal Transit Administration funds or Federal Highway Administration funds. Also included in the STIP are what's known as regionally significant projects, large projects that are added travel lanes or new road construction. Regardless of the funding source, they must be included in the STIP itself. And they're listed as such. In the STIP itself, we list each project, its description, and its phase, what phase will be completed in which year. We have a STIP that goes out to 2028, but I need to note that 2024, 2025, and 2026 and 7 are only considered a part of the STIP itself for fiscal constraint, meaning you have to make sure you don't overspend your budget. 28 is what we call illustrative, fiscal year 28. That's to let the public know what's in the pipeline and will be coming down the road in the future for programming in the STIP itself as a real project. I mentioned we have PE, right-of-way, and CN. Those are listed as PE, RW, and CN in the STIP. And if you see those, that's what it stands for. PE encompasses many things, including the environmental analysis and some of the scoping that will be done for a project in its early stages. Again, we are here to take your comments, and if you have specific comments about projects or questions about comments, we'll take those as well. Try our best to answer them in the meeting here. And what I would like to point out is we have a chat on the right side of this table, or the screen, and you can enter your questions into that chat box, and then we will see those. But I would like to ask anyone that happens to be attending today, if you would be kind enough to put your name in so that we can have a record of who might be attending the meeting today, and we'll go from there. So again, I thank you for participating in the Transportation Improvement Program 2024 to 2028 public involvement process. And I will turn the floor over at this time to Roy Nunnally, who will provide the beginnings of a brief presentation on the STIP itself. Thank you.
Hey team, this is Brandon from Technical Planning and Programming. Before we get to Roy's presentation, we are trying a virtual public involvement participation opportunity, I guess. So this is something that we have not done before. We're going to give it a run here. If you have a phone or are on the internet, you can use this QR code or go to wooclap.com and type in the code UCNKBR. And we will have a polling question. It's open-ended, asking what transportation projects are most important to you. So we see at the bottom right, we'll have the number of participants that are in there. Hopefully we can get that number up if the link is working. It looks like we are having issues with the virtual polling right now, so we will give that a shot a little bit later. Oh, there it goes. So it turns out we did have answers coming through. So major roads and bridges, sidewalks, bicycle infrastructure along roads, access management, projects, infrastructure. So we've got quite the word cloud coming through. You can keep sending those votes in. It looks like we got more people joining. We have 10 people now. I guess that word cloud just keeps changing, right? So the more ideas that you have or are interested in pursuing, the more, I guess, information that we have as the State Department of Transportation to do good work in the name of the public. So the idea here is to get a general understanding of things that and projects that people are interested in. So yeah, sidewalks and trails, bike lanes, Ohio River crossing comes up, bicycle infrastructure, bridges. And we just keep getting more here. We are going to move to the next polling question here. I imagine we will keep this or run it back again as we go through the presentation, since we have 2 hours total. But going to this next question here. And we will send the question. It should be asking, this is more towards our 2045 long-range transportation plan priorities. So we had 7 goals and priorities in our 2045 transportation plan. NDOT is going to be developing and updating the long-range transportation plan, which is 25-year plan that looks at demographic trends, changes in transportation, how people are moving, freight, aviation, the movement of goods, multimodal, all of that. And so these are the previous goals that we had, and we are interested in understanding, out of the most recent priorities that were established in long-range transportation plan, what is most important to you? This is also a question we've been asking on the road at our NDOT STIP open houses. So we've done a few in-person meetings. We were in Marion and Grant County, Maryville and Evansville. We also did Broad Ripple. So trying to get to different areas in the state and have a presence there, so people are able to, to come during their, their evenings or on their lunch break and voice their opinions on the work that we're doing. So looking at the poll answers, we've got 6 for safe and secure travel. Other 2 that really stood out, system preservation with 3 votes, and multimodal mobility. So thank you so much. We are glad that this worked out. It looked like it was turbulent at the beginning, but this really turned out. So we do appreciate your participation. We're going to log this information so we have a better idea of what people are interested in. And we will move on to the next part of the presentation. I'm going to introduce Roy Nunnally, who is the Director of Technical Planning and Programming, and he's going to kind of go through some of the details as far as STIP development and other work that NDOT does. So, Roy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brandon. As Jay Mitchell he discussed some of what is the STIP. So the STIP is a state transportation improvement program that is federally required for us. Is 5 years, but that fifth year, 2028, is considered what we call illustrative. So Federal Highway recognized just only the first 4 years of that STIP document. The document lists all the projects and phases expected to be funded within that 5-year time frame that is using federal funds, and also projects that are state funded projects that may be considered regionally significant. Regionally significant may be something that may tie into a hospital or a convention center. It may not be state funded, but it would have a massive regional impact. The STIP is a programming document, but it's not an accounting document. The funding and scheduling, the STIP has funding and schedule of transportation projects throughout the fiscal year, which starts in July of each year and ends June 30th of each year. It includes all state and local projects that are funded with federal highway funds or federal transit funds, and including passenger rail, public transit, bike and pedestrian facilities, and national parks, which may be some roadway improvements into these national parks. So why is the STIP important? The STIP is a staged multi-year document for the intermodal program for transportation projects. It's coordinated with our statewide transportation plan, which is a 20-plus year document. Metropolitan transportation plan, same as 20-plus year documents, as well as their transportation improvement programs that we'll talk about, as well as various other planning documents that we have going within our agency. The STIP is developed in cooperation with our Metropolitan Planning Organization partners. We have about 14 across the state, and also our regional planning organization, which is about 16 across the state. So the coordination of these of our documents is a federal requirement. The STIP must be compatible with the Transportation Improvement Program and the Metropolitan Transportation Long Range Plans as part of, for federal and regulatory requirements. And we'll get more into those discussion points. So what projects are in the STIP? Well, we have transit and bridge improvement projects. From transit, it's usually some of the operations that is included as a line item in our STIP document, as well as vehicle purchase for trains, carts, and things like that nature. Bridges, rehabs, several inspections. So sometimes when you get our STIP document, there may be group projects, and usually these are a series of bridges or inspections that we can get a greater deal if we were to bundle those projects together. And also small projects, small structure, culvert, pipe, and pipelining projects. Also included are, the ones that you're probably most familiar with will be some of the major roadway improvements, from added travel lanes, reconstruction or resurfacing of our roadways, bike and pedestrian amenities and incorporation into the system. Also operational improvements. So anything from an intersection improvement where we're adding turn lanes or modifying our interchanges, or modernizing our traffic signals, or even adding complete streets component. In some places, we're talking about intelligent transportation systems, which may be your dynamic messaging signs and sensors in that system. But also a lot of safety improvements are included in our STIP document, from pedestrians, crosswalk, bike, and pedestrian, and also guardrails, railroad crossings, and slide corrections. So right now we'll take a interactive break, and I will turn it back over either to Jay or to Brandon.
Thank you, Roy. We have an interactive break, and this is a break for comments to be submitted. If you have any or questions at this time, we'll take a brief break and entertain those. I see in the chat, Tom Gray mentioned roundabouts, but he did not put a comment or a question about it. Appreciate the comment, but is there more, Tom, that we need to know? I presume you may be either in favor of them or opposed to them. So, or if you have problems with them, if you would expand, we'd be happy to try to tackle that if you would like to. And at this point, we are still waiting for comments. And if you have them, please submit them. If not, we will give this a little bit of time, then move back to the presentation with Roy and perhaps Brandon Bergoa, who I sort of neglected in the earlier part of this description. He is running these interactive questionnaires from time to time. So I do want to point out that you can call in using 1-317-552-1674 using the code 2037808842#. And we do have that scrolling at the bottom of the screen for you. So at this time, I don't see any comments rolling in, and I abhor dead time in a production. So I'm going to turn this back over to either Brandon Bergoa or Roy Nunley to continue. So please feel free to jump in, gentlemen, whoever's first.
I did see comments come in from, I think we got 2 comments come in, one from Facebook, and I can tell can anyone else see those comments as well? I just only see a name. Okay. Well, if there are comments and questions, we'll get to those. But let's go ahead and start back up the presentation. So another question is asked, how is the STIP developed? So the STIP is developed on a 2-year cycles, and it's amended monthly in most cases. Indiana has both a decentralized and centralized programming process. One being our centralized, which our program management group, is made up of 4 asset teams, from bridge to roadways to safety and mobility. So those groups meet and work collectively and get inputs from the district offices. In some cases, in those district offices, they're coordinating with our NPO partners as well. And they develop and prioritize projects for each of those asset groups. And then we have the program management group that is responsible for setting the budget, setting what our policies are going to be, looking at what are some of our metrics and making sure that these projects meet those metrics. And they all work together to develop a state priority list of projects based on funding constraints. Projects are submitted by each of the 6 NDOT districts and is selected through this agency-wide process that I just described. We also work with our NPO partners who also, with their tips, our projects, if there's changes to projects on our facilities, we work through our Metropolitan Planning Organization and their transportation improvement document known as the TIP to get those projects in through the process. But there's a lot of stakeholder and public input collected by the NPOs, RPOs, and some of the NDOT districts at various points within our STIP development process. The STIP is also approved once we go through this process. The STIP is approved by our Federal Highway and FTA partners, Federal Transit Authority. As far as development activities, we typically start off with our STIP with a draft list of proposed projects. And you see there, it starts kind of in the September, October timeframe. It's all year. It's pretty much from that time frame, a lot of iterations of projects that are going back and forth. But in the meantime, we are coordinating between our 2 documents, which is the STIP, State Transportation Improvement Program, and the TIP, which is more the regional program. So it's a lot of different coordination. We're working on the STIP verbiage in mid-spring. And then late spring to early summer, we'll start in our 45-day comment period, which is where we are today. And our comment period started May 8th. It will end June 22nd. So get those comments in there. But, from that point, once we get all that information and we address the comments, we will finalize the STIP document. So it's finalize that draft STIP document and get it to Federal Highway and FTA for review, input, and approval. So kind of how this fits in with a lot of our other NDOT plans. We have multimodal and freight and mobility plans, and those plans are more, policy based plans that look at specific corridors that go all the way out to 20 plus years, as well as our long range transportation plan. We also have the Next Level Roads Indiana plan as well, and that's a 20-year plus plan. And if you type in Next Level Roads Indiana, you can get this interactive map that you probably see on the right-hand side of this slide, where you can get information from what's in our not long range, but the Next Level Transportation Plan, including some local funded initiatives. You can slice it by district and what have you. From that part, it feeds into our 20 and 10-year asset management plan, where we lose a lot of complicated and robust systems to analyze our assets and look for optimal treatments. From that point, that goes into our annual call for projects, what we discussed before with the asset teams, and they're selecting projects from that point. And so that it ends up developing that 5-year STIP construction plan. So that's how all these different plans kind of tie in together. Also, we have to, it's important that, NDOT works on state-owned facilities, but we do work with our MPO partners, for local projects as well. But in our STIP, our focus is going to be the state-owned facilities, interstates, state routes, and U.S. highways for the most part, FTA, which will be transit and some other projects. MPOs also play a real critical role with our STIP development. We have 14 MPOs all across the state. MPO stands for Metropolitan Planning Organizations. MPOs are policy boards, organizations created and designed, designated to carry out metropolitan planning process. And typically, an MPO is created when they have a metropolitan area that has a population of 50,000 or greater. MPOs do serve as a forum for the local governments to provide short and long-range plans to address related transportation concerns. Together with NDOT and the NDOT districts, they do serve as the primary source of local input for multimodal transportation planning and program implementation. So it is critical, if you're in the MPO area, to reach out to that MPO, and they have an entire process. It can get you engaged and involved in the planning process, whether that's with our STIP, the TIP, or with our long-range transportation plans. So there are some changes to the 2024 to 2028 STIP document. So this year, we will be incorporating the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, their TIP, their Transportation Improvement Program, into our STIP by reference. So in our STIP document, we may not have that actual project or projects in the MPO area in our document. There's a link that will take you to their document that includes those lists of projects. And so the state shall, this is one of the requirements, the state shall include each metropolitan TIP without change in our STIP document. So directly or by reference. So we're doing it by reference. We used to do it directly, but now it's by reference. And then, so the TIP has to be approved by the MPO, and then also by the governor or the governor's appointee, which is usually, in some cases, our commissioner. So what is a TIP? Again, the TIP is the same as our STIP document. It has it's about a 4-year requirement. Some TIPs are 5-year, but really only 4 years is recognized by our federal partners. It does include federal, state, and local projects. So, whereas the STIP is focused on the state locally owned projects, the TIP has more local projects in it as well. The TIPs must be consistent with the MPO's Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is their version of the a 20-plus year long-range transportation plan. So those two documents have to be consistent with the TIP, and their TIP must be fiscally constrained. Each MPO have their own process for updating and maintaining their TIPs. So this must be closely coordinated when we're developing our STIP document. Next is when you see listings of projects or project listings in our STIP document, this is the best way to kind of look at the document. Let me see if I can blow up my screen so I can see. There we go. So in the document, in the listing, you're going to have your typical information where you're going to have who sponsors the project. And that may be NDOT, a project that we developed, or it may come from a local. So it's different sponsors for the project, and then you're going to get information from a contract number, which is how we track it. So if you have a contract or construction number or something like that, it's easy if you had that number to contact us, and then we'll know exactly what project you are talking about throughout the state. Route name, the work type, the location. Then it also has federal categories. What are federal fund categories? So there's various fund categories you can see here in the yellow box, from CMAQ to federal lands to highway safety improvement, which is the HSIP, recreational trails, transportation alternative programs, which is usually your bike and pedestrian and other type programs. So if you're interested in that, and some of those are funded through that, but also funded through other programs, and also transit. So in it, as Jay had mentioned earlier at the start, we have different phases within it. So you might see what looks to be projects listed multiple times, but it may be listed as a different phase. So you might have construction phase, and there might be another line item for PE and right-of-way. So, it's not duplicate projects, it's just different phases that are showing, and they may have different funding amounts. This is the same, just kind of shows sometimes the project listings are by county. It may be by other large groups as well, by district, by county, but same principle applies. As far as the financial summary, in each one of our STIP document, there is a financial summary page where you're looking at, this is just a previous one, an example, because we're in 2024 to 2028 for this draft. But the principle is the same, still applies, where you can get an estimate of, the total amount of federal aid funding. If you can hit the buttons again, a few things will kind of light up. Yeah. So, so you can look at the subtotal of federal aid projects that we are using, also the subtotal of state funding projects, and then you have, all together, what are some of the local projects, and that is by fiscal year, and these are estimated amounts. So it's time again for an interactive break. So I will turn it over to either Jay or Brandon.
Well, thank you, Roy. I'm back. And so an interactive break, which means we are ready for some more comments. If someone wishes to submit a comment or a question, I will note that there is a bit of a discussion going on in the chat box about, of course, roundabouts. And from NDOT's standpoint, I will point out that roundabouts are applied to intersections, generally an intersection improvement project, meaning there's a problem with the intersection where it's starting to fail for one reason or another, congestion, crashes, something along those lines. So when we look at that interchange or intersection rather, and we consider what kind of solutions we can find for that particular intersection, one of the solutions that is almost always considered is, of course, the roundabout. It's not the only solution that's looked at, but a number of solutions are evaluated. And in the end, they are basically weighed against a matrix of the best benefit for the dollars spent. And sometimes roundabouts turn out to be the solution that is the preferred alternative that moves forward. You are seeing more roundabouts on INDOT highways, and you're seeing a lot more also on local roads as well. Some people hate them, some people are totally indifferent to them, and some people love them. But I can tell you that they do keep the the process of traffic moving smoothly. There are fewer stops involved. There are fewer crashes with roundabouts. Oddly enough, you'd think that it would have more, but no, there are fewer crashes with roundabouts in general. And it is very good for the air quality of an area, because we don't end up with a stoplight where vehicles just sit there, particularly on a day like today where it's very warm and you're producing carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, SO2, things of those natures, which can then later turn into ozone, which is not great for the environment. So they do improve air quality to some extent. They reduce the amount of crashes in many cases, and they do keep traffic moving. They are not the only solution, and we do look at other solutions. So they only show up when they are the solution that is preferred. It is proven that they will be the best solution. And yes, some people don't like them and probably never will like them, and I understand that. And now I did see that Tom did have a question. And it was a pertinent question. And well, what do we do to get you to stop making them? Well, we're probably not going to stop making roundabouts if it's not the final, but the best solution for the problem at hand. However, we would like to have the public get involved, get active. The best time to talk about when to or what might be applied to a particular problem is when we get into that PE stage in the STIP itself. That's when we're doing preliminary engineering. That's where we want public involvement at its highest, if possible, to get that. If you have a problem with roundabouts or you don't like that particular solution, that's the time to voice it. It's best if you can provide some information about why you don't like them. I just don't like them. What sort of rationale might be behind that. In addition, once the project moves forward and actually goes through design, we not always, but oftentimes on larger projects, will come back with a final opportunity for the public to comment on that. And there are actually some changes or tweaks to design made after that stage. So those are the times where you want to get involved. We can't necessarily stop a project, but we definitely want to hear your opinion, and your opinion does matter. And I have personally been to meetings where a member of the public has brought up a concern saying, we think you missed this. Really, we think you just blew it in the design here. And our designers go back and the engineers go back and they take that comment. And I've seen changes to the project itself for the final project that is placed on the ground. So I did want to note that. And at this point, I do not see any further questions. I do see, let's see, hold on a moment. I'm reading these as I speak. Hal Daniels, there needs to be more study about when to reduce a 4-lane major highway to 2 lanes with greater concentration, let's see, with a center turn lane and bike lanes on each side of the road. US 40 between Greenfield and Cumberland is a major collector, especially when I-70 has problems. It should have remained a 4-lane highway. Hal, appreciate your comment. We have turned that into a 2-lane facility with the bike lanes and I think the center turn lane for a segment of that US 40 near Greenfield rather. And I've been on it, and you are correct. Most of the time it works perfectly fine. But obviously, when I-70 fails, US 40 becomes the backup road, and that could be congested at that time. But right now, all you see on the road now is paint on the ground, on the pavement. It will be evaluated as time goes forward. We find that when the road lanes are not needed as much, we try to accommodate as much activity with people that are riding bicycles and pedestrians as much as possible. And also those turn lanes in the middle of the roadway, they reduce conflicts, and we have fewer crashes in those cases where we have a 4-lane facility and someone suddenly makes a left-hand turn without much notice. Then sometimes there can be a crash in the rear end of the car that is following it, and so forth. So just a little note about that. And Hal notes also there's a major bike route 1 mile south of Cumberland on the Cumberland Trail. And that is correct, yes. At this point, we will return to the presentation from Roy, unless Brandon has another question he wants to pose. And then I will look over some comments here and then try to be ready for the next time we have a break to give you some answers and so forth on the comments. Thank you again.
All right, so we'll start the next part of this is how can you get involved in the planning process for our STIP and just our planning process in general. So to get involved, in discussions early and frequently, it's very important. If you're in a major metropolitan area, we mentioned the metropolitan planning organizations. There are 14 of those across the state, and each one of those have regular public meetings, whether that's a technical meeting where they're discussing some of the projects and needs and analysis, and policy boards where they actually, are passing, what projects or programs they're going to move forward with. MPOs in particular, they do a lot of early coordination that feeds into our process. So we do coordinate with them quite heavily. MPOs also have more local information on the planning needs. They know their areas. So if you're in an area that has a metropolitan planning organization, that will be a great start to get involved in their process. If you are in a non-metropolitan or rural area, then you can also check with one of our 6 NDOT district office that we'll talk about, as well as there's 16 RPOs, rural or regional planning organizations across our state. So it's pretty covered. And then you can always contact us as well. So we talked about the district offices. NDOT has 6 district offices across the state. The districts serve as our front line in terms of coordination with many of our stakeholders and elected officials and other local officials. The districts are responsible for short-term planning projects, programming. They do a lot of coordination with the locals, and they are responsible for a lot of the project management activities you see in some of the maintenance of our assets. So districts play a critical role. They are responsible for submitting project and needs in the annual call process. We talked about, we had the different asset teams. Those district offices are responsible for prioritizing projects in their districts, which feeds into those asset teams that looks at trying to prioritize at a state level. So the districts also have project managers that manage many of the projects that you see when you're driving a lot of construction signs. So the districts are directly managing those projects in most cases. Unless it's something that's extremely large, like a new interstate or something along that line, a new major corridor. District staffs also participate in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's technical and advisory committees. So there's multiple ways for that information to get back into our STIP process. So here are our district contacts. So if you just go to NDOT for you or NDOT customer services, which is 1-855 NDOT INDOT for you, or for 855-463-6848, and there's a ticker at the bottom. That's the best way to get in contact with your district. Also, if you submit any comments through the NDOT for you program, or it goes to the right districts, whether that's a central office issue or a district issue, it goes to the right place. It is logged. and they do a really good job of providing response and or taking action. As noted again, we have metropolitan planning organizations all across the state. We have 14 of them. MPOs have their own public involvement process and opportunities. So we mentioned technical meetings, board meetings. They have public meetings, a lot of early coordination and stakeholder meetings. So there's a lot of opportunities with our MPO partners if you like to get engaged in the planning process. The MPOs are responsible for what we call short-range planning, which is 4 or 5 years, and that's usually the tip. And they're also responsible for longer-term planning programs and initiatives. So together with NDOT, they serve as a very primary source for local input into our process. You can also participate, and so we've had a series of 8 in-person meetings over the last few weeks. Now we wrapped up our last meeting in Evansville last night, and so today we have these virtual meetings. So we will have these are 2-hour session virtual meetings. So we'll basically reset and redo this presentation deck probably in another 10 minutes or so. There's plenty of opportunities to get involved. There's our online comment forms that can be found at www.in.gov/NDOT/3132HTM. So there's different ways that you can get engaged. And also, this meeting will be recorded and available online tomorrow. And also the presentation that we're doing here will be made available tomorrow. We've also reached out to over 236 local libraries, and we've posted flyers or have them requested, post flyers of these meetings, of these events. What is the STIP? How to get involved and engaged. You can also mail or email your comments. You can email email the draft STIP at draftstip, STIP, at ndot.in.gov, or you can mail your comments to Michael McNeil, who's our NDOT STIP coordinator at NDOT at this address. Also, the comments that we do receive, whether that's from the 45-day comment period or comments that we get from the STIP comment form or mailed in or NDOT for you, all this is processed by our STIP coordinator, Michael McNeil, and the planning staff. So comments and responses are documented and coordinated with the agency's communication division so that we'll make sure that we're consistent. All comments received from the 45-day review period will be included in the appendices. There's also a recording of this that will be on YouTube as well. Comments received also from our STIP amendment. Our STIP is amended pretty much every month, sometimes it may be every other month, but usually when we make some changes, that may be some projects that costs have changed, or projects moving in, moving out, or just different things that we have to amend that document. It's usually open for a 7-day comment period, and you can get on listservs and other chat channels to become aware when we do release those documents, and they are put online. And when we get comments from those are posted as well. In addition, the comments that we get from this meeting will also be included and processed in our STIP document, and usually they'll be in our appendices of that STIP document once it's finalized. Also, when we talk about the metropolitan planning organizations, we mentioned that there's 16 also regional planning organizations across the state. The 16th one is pretty much central Indiana. It is basically managed and by our Indianapolis metropolitan planning organization. But they've kind of spread out to some of those counties all around their metropolitan planning organization and to make that 16th regional planning area. But the RPOs serve the transportation needs of a small urban and rural areas, including they perform a lot of planning, eligible planning activities that support local communities and also our rural communities as well. Their planning activities, our RPOs are aimed at supporting NDOT Central District Office, as well as our district offices as well, our district offices and central office. So with that, my part of the presentation is over, but we'll address some questions. But I thank you for your time. The draft document is located on our website, again at www.in.gov/n./3132.htm. I am not going to remember all that, but if you just type in n.stip, usually it'll take you right to where our current STIP is, which is the 2022 to 2026, I believe. And then the draft STIP is what we're having these meetings in open comment period for 2024 and 2028. So Michael McNeil said if it's www.in.gov. Is it draft STIP? I thought I saw pop up on my screen. Again, you can mail your comments in. With that, I will turn it over. If there's any questions, we can start answering those, as well as is there any additional survey items that the team is going to handle. I will turn it over. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Roy. We appreciate that. For some reason, I can't get my camera working here. There we are. We are going to go ahead and look at the poll questions real quick. So we'll go back to the beginning to see if the result had changed or if anything different has popped up. And then after that, we'll kind of do one final Q&A or frequently asked questions and address any other comments that may have come in. So if you still want to participate, you are more than welcome to. Again, the website is wooclap.com, WOOCLAP.com, wooclap.com. And the code is U as in uncle, C as in color, N as in nice, K as in kick, B as in boy, R as in ridge. So UCNKBR. It looks like we're getting a couple other responses. It'll be difficult if they keep shuffling around, but I will do my best here. Again, major roadways and bridges, asset management coming up as a priority. Waterways, that's something that's new. Complete streets is on there. Ohio River crossing. We got sidewalks, roads, highways, bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian crossings, sidewalks and trails, connect, assist. So we're seeing some descriptive words, access, love it, road access, bicycles and bridges, re-signing. Again, I would encourage anybody who has participated in this aspect of the interactive polling to submit a question or a comment on the STIP. You know, if you put in re-signing, is there a specific area or corridor where you want to see signs redone? Is this a redesign or do they need to be upgraded? If you are able to put that comment in, we can get it logged and send your concerns or questions to the right people, whether that is at the central office, the district, or the sub-districts. We are definitely here to do what we can and be good stewards of public planning in transportation. Nuclear power showing up, pedestrian crossings, access all around, waterways. So we'll go ahead and go to the next question here as well. We do appreciate you all participating in that poll. Going to the second question at wooclap.com, code UCNKBR. We are looking at, again, safe and secure travel coming as the top priority for those looking at the 2045 long-range transportation plan goals. Multi-mobility coming in with 4 votes, and system preservation. Then we have environmental responsibility. And then coming in at a tie is new technology and advancement, economic competitiveness, and quality of life. No votes for strategic policy action. And that, I think, is also sort of reflective of some of the comments we got with our in-person pin board. So again, at the live meetings, we did have an interactive poster board, more or less, that let people decide, hey, what is my priority for the next Indiana and INDOT long-range transportation plan? What do I want to see? So your comments are important. Again, if you feel so compelled, please do elaborate on your concerns. If there is something specific you want to see in terms of safe and secure travel, and where we are going with the long-range transportation plan, let us know. That could be new technology. That could be using the safe system approach, or integrating more strategic highway safety plan initiatives. Whatever is on your mind is what we are concerned with here at INDOT. It is our top priority to be good stewards of public funding, the money that comes through, or the ideas from people. And not only just communities, neighborhoods, and stakeholders, but on the individual level. It is important to us that your questions are answered and that your concerns are responded to. And we are proactively looking to see how we can be a better service to you. So a couple more votes coming in. We saw some changes again in safe and secure travel and multimodal mobility, excuse me. We do appreciate your participation in this. We're glad that it worked out all right. And we will kind of switch over to Jay again to get any final comments or questions that may have come through. And I'm going to put you on live, Jay.
Thank you, Brandon. Penny had a comment that she has submitted. It's a very good comment. It has something to do with roundabouts, and an opinion that the reason that they don't work is because people don't work well together, or they don't work together well enough to know when to yield and when to stop. That is a very good comment. We appreciate the comment. I'm going to forward that up the chain, so to speak, but why it's important is this. The last thing that INDOT should do, or local government should do, or any of us should do, is design a roundabout, drop it in place, and walk away. We need to do, in some cases where there is not a lot of familiarity with roundabouts, do some sort of public education program, how they work, how you should use them when you enter in, and how you exit out of a roundabout. And more importantly, a roundabout that has multiple lanes going through, which can be complicated. My own experience is, when I do come to certain roundabouts, I have to think more than I obviously would have if I have a stoplight. So education is important. I was asking during the break if INDOT had a YouTube presentation on roundabouts. So I'm not sure if we do, but I'm going to make a recommendation that we get some sort of YouTube information out there or something like that for the public. Also, more information about when a roundabout's coming in, how to use the roundabout. Certain parts of the states, obviously, where there have been fewer roundabouts installed. Others, such as north of Indianapolis, everyone knows that the area has a lot of roundabouts and pretty much knows how to use them. And they work pretty effectively up there. Hal asked, did you, meaning INDOT, do a before and after study on the accident analysis? And I presume that we're talking about roundabouts. INDOT collects data on crashes. We analyze that data. And yes, we probably have done those studies. I don't have those in front of me right now, so I don't want to definitively say we have a specific study, but I'm sure we have some sorts of studies and we have lots of data. So what I'm going to do is also ask our folks at INDOT to find any such studies and any such documentation, and then we will probably try to post that with our STIP with perhaps a link to those studies. I'll check with our safety folks to see what they've actually done. And I'm sure that we have done before and after analysis of some sort. I have something from Goshen, and it has to do is it safe to assume that the project listing in the STIP is in addition to the operating budgets? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to follow up with that in that by operating budgets, I presume that you are talking about snow removal, crack and seal sealing, and picking up debris, picking up carcasses, things of that nature, and just sweeping and those sorts of things. That is correct, yes. And I have a little more information during the break I might be able to access here for you. And that is, again, searching. Yeah, the answer that I got back from our folks is the financial page in the STIP itself includes a total dollar figure of what was approved by the state legislature for the biennium, the 2-year budget. It includes capital and operating, although it shows in the STIP as a resource, and we don't necessarily list specific activities out, such as we're going to pick up this many carcasses, that sort of thing. It's just a line item that does show up in the STIP. The projects themselves are in addition to that are listed in the STIP. So that's the answer to that question. And going back down here, so I'm kind of reviewing some of the questions here to see if I missed any. Karen would like to know, and she would love to see more semi-truck parking investments along West I-70. The number of trucks parked on the ramp shoulders every night is staggering at exit 23. She's correct. I'm familiar with exit 23. You will be happy to know, Karen, that in the previous STIP, and it probably won't show up in this new STIP because the project has now been awarded, and it is actually going to construction, I believe, this summer, or perhaps next summer at the latest. And there is a new welcome center on I-70 just to the west of Terre Haute as you enter the state that's being rehabbed totally. Approximately $42 million is being spent on that. And part of that process, and part of the project rather, is actually to add additional truck parking. And we hope that will help to alleviate at least some of the additional truck parking you see on exit 23. And that exit 23 is not alone throughout the state. We have a major situation where not only Indiana, but many states are experiencing truckers that come to the end of their time. And now, because they're monitored electronically, they must mandatorily park for a certain amount of period. And oftentimes that turns out to be the ramps themselves, which we're not pleased with. We're trying to remedy that as soon as we can. By the way, all of the, not all, but most all of the welcome centers in Indiana along the interstates are going through a major rehab. Some have already gone through it. Others, like the one near Terre Haute on I-70, are currently going through that. And almost every one of them will have additional truck parking. And then moving further down, let's see, Jack mentioned, have we any plans to address terrible weaving solutions anywhere other than Clear Path? I know it's not a state project, but I-465 and North Keystone Parkway in Carmel is the worst I've ever seen. Again, not a state project, so we in DOT would not necessarily have plans on that particular stretch, but we would encourage the local entity to look at that and review that as well. And we're also available, our folks in our engineering section are available to add assistance to local governments should they ask. And then there was a sign about some welcome signs from Kyle, sorry. Kyle asked about, can we get our signs back? I'm not familiar with which signs they are you're referring to. I'm not sure where you're talking about, but I'll tell you what, if you would submit a request or just a comment and something called INDOT4U, you can do that online, or you can use the number 855-463-6848. We can then research the what has happened to your signs and why they might have been changed, and if there is any possibility that they can be returned to you in your area. I do appreciate the comment. In addition, since you mentioned it in the STIP, we'll also do follow-up on our own here. But we're not sure of the location, so if you could provide that, that would be great. I think I've hit most, if not all, of the questions. Some, if we did miss them, again, they will show up in the final STIP document. We will list the comment that was received and then the answer that we have for that comment.
I think there was one more about arrow per lane signs, but we would have to do some research on that.
Yeah, Jack asked a question, and it was just pointed out to me, is also, where do you plan on implementing partial VS and full APL signs? And where do you plan on implementing them? At this point, I was advised we'll have to do more research on that question and then also provide an answer later. So, viewing once more. I have two chat rooms going on, so I'm checking two at the same time. Oh, I did get a response in one of our chat rooms internally. They've just changed the welcome signs to Indiana signs. So again, we'll follow up and try to get you some more information, Kyle. And so at this point, we will be here to answer questions or take comments. I do appreciate your comments. We seek comments. And we are scheduled to be here for another hour. We will probably run the presentation in the background, and we will be here monitoring the screen to see if any more questions or comments come in. Brandon, do you have any follow-up at this point? Yeah, I think he does another FAQ. Thank you. Somebody pointed that out to me.
It's on the screen.
Oh, it's on the screen.
So, Brandon wants you to answer it.
Of course not. So the question is, why is it critical to plan so far ahead? A little miscommunication there, my apologies. So, okay, why is it critical? We look 25 years out into the future. We actually look further than that. What we try to identify are trends that are happening now, try to anticipate trends for the future, which is very difficult, especially in this stage with rapidly changing technology. What we're looking at right now are the possible implementation of vehicles that are self-governing or self-operating vehicles and how they might interact with our highway system, what kind of changes we need to make to our highway system. Electronic vehicles, which is electric vehicles, what kind of impact that will have to our system. The major concern about funding, obviously, because most of our funding comes from the gasoline tax. And if people don't buy gasoline, how will they accommodate how will we get money for our roads and improvements? Our legislature's already addressed that to some degree, where they have an additional fee for electric vehicles when you register your vehicle every year. But regarding some other trends that are happening for the future, we still have to see what's going to happen. We plan out into the future as long as we can. We have analysis tools that tell us where, given today's information, where there might be a problem in the future, where you may have congestion. We also have analysis of our bridges, of our pavements. We pretty much know when we put down new pavement what that lifespan is going to be based on the amount of traffic that's on that roadway and anticipated traffic to the future. Same thing with bridges. And we will adjust our TIP, or STIP rather, for that as projects go through the asset management committee meetings and so forth. And we will adjust that. Our long range plan is 25 years into the future. It's based a lot on what we know today, what we anticipate is going to happen tomorrow, a lot of public involvement on that plan itself. The advantage to planning is, one of my former bosses said, long-range planning is self-correcting. What he means by that is every 4 years or 5 years, we reevaluate our plan. We see what still is relevant, what's no longer relevant, what doesn't matter. things that were very important to us 20 years ago don't mean anything today. Sometimes you will have a roadway where we definitely had a need for additional capacity for particularly certain industries. Today, those industries are no longer in that location, or they have modernized to such an extent that they don't have that kind of traffic related to the industry itself. So those roads that we may have planned and have not yet built, we no longer need to build. Those additions may no longer be needed, and we can transfer those assets to other things that are more important and pressing at that particular time. So again, we update the plan every 4 to 5 years. It is self-correcting to some degree, and that's pretty much why we plan for the future, because if we don't plan for the future, we will not be ready for the future when it gets here. Oh, okay. This is a very good question that popped up on the screen. Thank you, Brandon. And that is, how does it determine what projects are part of the STIP and what projects are not? Well, it's a very easy answer. Those projects that are part of the STIP are those projects that will be funded with federal funding. If it is not a project that is funded with federal funding, it does not have to be listed in the STIP itself. You will find those sorts of projects in other documents that NDOT publishes. We do have a map out that shows our 20-year plan of activities that we intend to do, some of which are going to be federally funded, some are not, but almost everything does show up on that particular map. And maybe Brandon will give us a link to that map in the chat or on the screen itself in a little while. So that's, anyway, the projects are in the STIP. How do we determine if you're talking about which projects move forward versus which projects don't move forward? All of our projects go through an asset management process where there are 4 asset groups that are evaluating potential projects that might go into production, so to speak. The first one that I can think of is mobility. That would be added capacity, added lanes, new roadways, or even intersection improvements to some degree. The next one will be obviously pavement, and that is which part of the pavement needs to go first, where do we have problems, where is it deteriorating, where is it deteriorating faster than we anticipate, because that can happen. And then also bridges, that's one, and then safety. Each of those asset management teams uses a scoring process, and it has a call for projects every year, meaning at this time, submit your applications for projects and give us your justification for those projects in the analysis of what sort of data you have to justify the need for that project. That is then scored by those asset management teams, and based on a budget allocation for the future year that they plan to list those projects to begin, they will then choose highest scoring projects first, going down the list until they essentially run out of money at that point in their budget, the proposed budget at that time. And those are the projects that then go into our production plan, which later will show up into the STIP when they hit that 5-year period. It would show up in the STIP. That's how that is done.
All right.
One other project that does show up in the STIP, I did sort of neglect, and I think I mentioned it earlier, and Roy mentioned it, that would be regionally significant projects, regardless of the funding source, whether we're paying for that with state funds, with funds we may have gotten from leasing the toll road, anything like that, if it's not federal funds, but it is regionally significant. Major added travel lanes for a length of period, usually greater than 1 mile of length. New roadways, obviously, that are longer than perhaps a mile, new interstate, things of that nature, and even privately funded roadways. As Roy mentioned, sometimes a hospital may build a road that goes and connects with a street, city street, or even a state highway. If they are regionally significant, we will still list those in the STIP itself. We'll note that they are paid for by a different source other than federal funds, but they are required to be listed. Brandon, I see you on the screen, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. We appreciate that. So we are going to go through the presentation one more time. What we will do is go through the virtual polling again. We won't spend a ton of time on it. We'll just give it a quick review. And if you want to vote, if you haven't voted, you will definitely be able to do that. So we'll move to the next slide here. Again, the way to get involved with the slide here is to use wooclap.com, wooclap.com, and the code for that is UCNKBR. It'll show up on this next screen here. And this was the first question that we had. It was a word cloud, so open-ended. You are still able to participate if you would like, and it's what transportation projects are most important to you. You know, some examples were new roads, bicycle infrastructure, roundabouts, and sidewalks. If you look at it, we got some that were similar to those answers and others that were different. So we have people talking about bike lanes and sidewalks, crosswalks, municipalities, highways, roads, major roads and bridges, access, waterways, complete streets, new roads and highway expansion, pedestrian crossings, re-signing, Ohio River crossing, people, cities, municipalities again. So we've got a group of different answers here, and that's what we really want to see is, you know, what are people interested in pursuing, what is important to them. And again, I will reiterate, if you feel so inclined, please do leave a comment either on the STIP comment page or through INDOT4U. If you want to see, you know, something specific, if you have a question regarding re-signing in your area on a state road where you live, you know, if there is bicycle infrastructure or crosswalks that is needed on a state facility that you travel or commute on a regular basis, we want to know that. So again, INDOT4U is an excellent way for your concerns to go through, be recorded, and make sure we get a response and a plan of action if possible. So we'll go to the next slide here. And that is the second polling question talking about our long-range transportation plan. The 7 goals that we had originally set out for the 2045 plan include safe and secure travel, economic competitiveness and quality of life, environmental responsibility, system preservation, multimodal mobility, new technology and advancement, and strategic policy action. And people were able to vote again at wooclap.com using code UCNKBR to highlight what is their priority, what goals do they want to see in the upcoming long-range transportation plan update. So the top 2, safe and secure travel, multimodal mobility, followed by system preservation, environmental responsibility, new technology, and advancement. You got 1 vote for economic competitiveness and quality of life, and 0 for strategic policy action. So we appreciate your participation, your help voting. We will move on to the next part of the presentation, and we do have the opportunity for you to comment if you would like. There is a number on the bottom, 317-552-1674. This is to call into a Teams call with one of our specialists. If you have a question that you want answered, we will get that recorded and sent to the right person. I am about to put Roy Nunnally on the presentation here, and he will go through some information about what the STIP is, what can be expected, and how projects and needs that are identified get through the STIP in the planning process. So take it away, Roy.
Thanks, Brandon. My name is Roy Nunnally. I am the Director of Planning and Programming at INDOT. And this is going to be the same set of slides that we did earlier. We started at 1 o'clock. This is a 2-hour session. So if you are interested in seeing this presentation again, we'll go through the same presentation. So if you want to stay on, you're welcome to. If you're new, welcome. But we want to talk about the STIP. This is what we're here for, to talk about and get your input into this STIP process. Right now, we're in a 45-day comment period, and so we would love to hear from you. But what is the STIP? The STIP is the State Transportation Improvement Program, It is a federally required construction document. Ours is about 5 years. We have about 5 years of projects in it, but Federal Highway recognizes 4 years. 4 years. That 5th year is considered illustrative, but we do include it. The document lists all projects and project phases expected to be funded within that time frame, with federal funds as well as state-funded projects that are deemed regionally significant. Regionally significant can be anything from a state or local project that may connect to a university, a hospital, a convention center, something along that line, that state fairground, that may generate a lot of regional traffic. So that, regardless of funding sources, must be included in the STIP. The STIP is a programming document. It's not an accounting document. It identifies fundings and sets the schedule for transportation projects and programs by fiscal year. So when we say in fiscal year, the start of our fiscal year, the state fiscal year, starts in July 1st of each year and ends June 30th. So the STIP also includes state, again, and local projects that are federally funded, including federal transit projects as well, including highway, passenger rail, freight, public transportation, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian, and also national parks. So a lot of cases we have roads that are going into some of our national parks. Those would be included in our STIP document. So the STIP is important. It is a very important document. Without it, we will not be able to get any of our federal funds approved. It is a federally required document, but it is a multi-year state intermodal program of projects, transportation projects, that is coordinated with our various transportation plans, including some of our regional transportation improvement plans through our various metropolitan planning organizations across the state. Again, it is required. It is developed in coordination with our MPOs, with our transit partners, and with also our regional planning organizations, which we have about 16 across the state. So the STIP is important because it has to be compatible with the Transportation Improvement Program, which are those regional areas, those metropolitan regional plans for the state, and their Metropolitan Transportation Plan documents, which is essentially their 20-year long-range plan documents. So there are various projects in the STIP, one being, there's a lot of transit projects in there and transit line items that may include anything from operations and maintenance, as well as vehicle purchases. So some cases they're purchasing buses, rail carts, and other ticketing equipment and things of that nature. The STIP also includes a lot of bridge improvements and rehabs. For example, inspections, bridge painting, pipelinings, and small structures. It's also important to note that in some cases you may see projects that may be grouped because we get better value for a dollar when we group projects into larger ones. For example, bridge painting. We're not going to have just one bridge specifically getting painted. There might be a series of bridge painting across a region or across the state. And so in the STIP, you might see bridge painting for various bridges or inspections or debris removal, just different types. So we do group projects together. Also included is the typical projects that you would see in a transportation improvement program, such as, in some cases, added travel lanes, new road constructions, reconstruction and resurfacing projects, some of our active transportation, which will be our bike and pedestrian facilities, also operational maintenance and improvements. So that can be anything from intersection improvement when you're adding turn lanes, improving the movement at an intersection, improving the traffic signals, modernizing them so that they're connected and adjust to traffic patterns, and also intelligent transportation systems where we're adding sensors that's collecting data into our system that allows our modernized traffic signals or provides messages that, hey, there's an incident occurring at this location of the corridor. take a detour route. So that complete streets, safety improvements as well from bike and pedestrian crosswalks, guardrails, railroad crossing improvements, as well as slide corrections. So slide corrections is, when you get a lot of, dirt, mud, or rocks that kind of falls onto the roadway, we try to fix that so that, those won't occur. There's locations in the south east part of Indiana that has a lot of rock slides. It's very hilly terrain. So that those projects are included in our STIP. I'm not sure. Are we doing an interactive break? And if you are, I will turn that over to either Jay or Brandon Bagoa.
Oh, thank you. We did receive a comment from Kyle, a follow-up comment. And Kyle asked, why do we chip and seal state highways? Can we just seal them or maybe change the process of chip and seal so the roadway isn't so rough? We'll get you a better answer in the long run for the STIP itself, but for now I can tell you that chip and seal is sort of a broad approach to taking care of the roadway itself. The alternative, and we do use this alternative occasionally, is where we send a crew out with sealing agent. It looks to me a lot like tar, maybe something else, but it's sealing agent. And they have squeegees and actually seal the cracks in the roadway itself. Time consuming, takes forever to go a single mile and so forth, and it's very labor intensive. So chip and seal is a process where you treat 5-10 miles of road at a time. We can get that done within one day. The cost is relatively low when you consider the alternatives. And the advantages to chip and seal are, it's a proven preventative maintenance technique, and it does extend the life surface of the roadway and also the subsurface of the roadway itself by preventing water from getting under the roadway and then in the wintertime freezing and expanding outward and causing potholes and then destroying not only the surface itself but also the roadway itself. So from time to time, it's an adverse effect. So chip and seal does help that. It also provides a very good friction surface. If we just did a seal without the chipping part on top, the gravel, there's less friction. So when you slow down and accelerate, you will not be as effective in your automobile. So that is why we do chip and seal in the way that we do. It is rough. It does increase the rough index for the roadway itself, particularly obviously right after the day after it's been chip and sealed. Usually after a few weeks, the roadway gets smoother as the stones are applied, get pushed in a little deeper into the actual sealing agent themselves. And after a while, it's less obvious to the driver and the noise factor does go down. But again, proven technique. We'll provide more information on the advantages of chip and seal in the final document itself and what I've just provided. Thank you very much on that. And looking to see if we have any additional comments or questions. I do not see any at this time. So at this point, I will turn the floor back over to either Brandon Bragoa or Roy Nunley to continue the presentation or to ask further questions.
Thanks, Jay. And if we can advance to the next slide. So we're going to talk about how the STIP is developed. So the STIP is developed and updated, fully updated every 2 years. So, but we do amend it monthly as much as possible. Sometimes it's every other month, depends on what we have going on. Indiana has both a decentralized and centralized programming process. And that includes for our 4 asset teams. Let me see if I can zoom this out a little bit, which is bridge, roadway assets, which is going to look at some of those geometric deficiencies. We talk about rock slides and things like that, pavement reconstruction, also mobility. So this is where you get the asset, not the asset, but the added travel lanes, the bike and pedestrians, the smart signals, dynamic messaging signs, then also safety asset, which covers a multitude of projects that likely we go within all different asset teams. But projects are submitted through our 6 district offices and selected through an agency-wide process known as our statewide asset management process. With these asset teams, you see all those 4 teams reporting to a program management group. The program management group is responsible for setting the targets, the goal, the funding constraints to ensure that we are meeting our target, or what our goals are, and that funding is distributed, adequately. So, but the asset teams are the ones that are prioritizing statewide. But projects are submitted by the 6 districts that feed into these 4 asset groups. And that is coordinated with our metropolitan planning organizations, which we have about 14 across the state, local public agencies, and transit coordinators. We also have a lot of stakeholder and public input that's collected by our MPOs, our regional planning organization, RPOs, and our NDOT district offices at various points within the STIP development process. Once we kind of get all of that, the STIP is approved by Federal Highway Authority Administration, FWA, and then the Federal Transit Authority, FTA. So that is critical. Without that approval, we cannot use federal funds for these projects. So here's another kind of explanation of how the STIP is developed and some of the activities. The first step is the draft list of proposed projects. So we're working with our MPOs and others from September all the way through March with a list of projects. So that's a pretty interactive process, and it goes back and forth, which is why it takes time to do that. And then you have some early STIP and TIP coordination in that process where we try to make sure things are lined up, the priorities, goals, those match up. And then, we're working on the verbiage, so to make sure that it includes the latest language, latest information from our federal partners and activities that's going on within the agency that we are correcting. And then from that point, we go to a 45-day comment period, which is where we are now. Our comment period for this 45 started May 8th of this year and will end June 22nd. And so with all those in place, the final draft, so right now all this is draft document we're commenting on, but the final draft, once we hear all the public comments, process the public comments, address all of our federal partners' comments, make those adjustments, we'll finalize the document and submit it to our federal partners for approval. So the STIP ties in with various other documents within the agency. So we have multimodal freight plans, and also this ties into our long-range transportation plan. Our long-range transportation plan is about a 20-plus year multimodal document that looks at everything from technology to goals, safe and efficient travels, economic development, policies, and things of that nature. So our long-range plan is not project specific. It does have projects in there, and these are critical projects. I know someone asked, why do we have to do long range? Why does it take so long to do to plan for projects? And the answer is that a lot of major projects require a lot of review and approval and coordination and funding. So some can be extremely expensive. You can go anywhere from a few $1 million to billions of dollars. And so it takes time and priority to put these together. So all these different plans start looking at what are our needs, what are we trying to accomplish, what technologies are out there, what's the trends, how's the demographics shifting. And so all that's coming together to develop a kind of a vision, as to a long-range vision as to how we want to set these corridors, how we want the transportation system to look. We also have the 20-year Next Level Indiana program. So that's bike trails and roadways. And so that also takes a 20-year look into the future. It's a multi-billion-dollar program that feeds into also our transportation asset management plan. So right now we got the 20-plus year whittling it down to a 10-year plan. So we have an asset management plan where we look at a lot of our assets and look at the life cycle, what treatments are needed in a 10 to 20-year period. It's not concrete, but it gives us an idea of what is needed. Some of the public meetings we're asking, how do you know how much funds we're going to need? Well, these asset management plans help with that. So that feeds into the process. You got your 20-year, 10-year, and then that funnels down to our 5-year program. So a lot of those projects that are coming in through our 5-year plan or our STIP, many of them are coming from major studies, assessments of our system, our assets, and it's feed into that 5-year construction program. On the right, you see a map that's the next level roads. If you type in next level roads Indiana or next level, you will come up with this interactive map where you can click. It is updated daily. You can click on the nodes. It will tell you what project is available, or you can just show the projects that you want to see from bridge to road to mobility. You can also look at projects that may be more local in nature, but is kind of managed through NDOT, or you can slice it by district. So it's a pretty powerful tool. You can click on the node and drill down. So Next Level Roads Indiana, that's a great way to find out what's going on in your area that you're interested in. So in the state of Indiana, we have about 14 metropolitan planning organizations. We call them MPOs. So MPOs are policy boards of organizations created and designed to carry out metropolitan transportation planning processes for those regions. Typically, an MPO it covers an area that has a metropolitan planning area, a population of 50,000 or more. That qualifies. When you have that and you meet that threshold, meet or exceed that threshold, in some cases you can become that MPO. So they're usually not just a city, but it's a large area. So you see the map to your right, you might have different counties involved in that, like Indianapolis, they have surrounding 9 counties. Up north near Chicago and South Bend, they have 4 counties that they plan for. It really is 2, but that, South Bend, they plan for additional 2 areas and serve those areas as well. You see a lot of our MPOs extend across state lines. If you look on the east side, southeast side of town of our state, you have Cincinnati. We have 1 county, Dearborn County, that serves in that MPO. And then also not shown in this one is Louisville, Kentucky, which we have a couple of counties in the southern part of Indiana that serves at the Louisville area Metropolitan Planning Organization. But together, these MPOs serve as a forum for local governments to provide short and long-range plans and to address transportation-related concerns in those areas. So they develop short-range plans known as transportation improvement plans for their regions. And together with NDOT, our district office, they also serve as a primary source of local input for input into our process. So MPOs play a very critical role. And if you're in an MPO area, we'll give you more information on how to get in contact with them. But there are some changes to our STIP document. In previous years, including the current, a lot of the projects this year, we decided to go and we moved to incorporating those projects in those metropolitan planning organization areas by reference. So those projects may not show up as a project in our document, but it is referenced to the TIP document. So if you want projects in that metropolitan area, you would have to go to that metropolitan area transportation improvement program, the TIP, to find out more information. But what is the TIP? And so the TIP is similar to what our STIP document is, but it's more regional and localized. And so they still have the same requirement. They have They can have a 5-year transportation improvement document, but Federal Highway recognizes that 4th year, so that 5th year is illustrative. It does include federal, state, and local projects. Our STIP focuses on state-owned facilities, so your interstates, your state routes, your U.S. highways, but we also have some projects that are regionally significant that may not be on state projects, as well as some transit projects and some others. So, but the MPO's TIP document does include all of those type of projects and more. Their TIP must be consistent with their long-range plan, which is called the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP. So there must be some consistency between those documents, and their documents must be fiscally constrained. They must demonstrate that it's fiscally constrained. Lastly, each MPO have their own process for updating and maintaining their TIPs. So if you are in those areas and you're looking for projects, there's opportunities for you to get involved, but it's not consistent throughout the state. So they have various different policies, processes, and procedures that will be complicated to explain in this slide deck. So when you do see projects in our STIP, how do you review those? So you have the typical projects where you have the sponsor, whether that's a NDOT sponsor or the MPO may have suggested a project, or it might be a local project or locally funded project, or a project on a system that someone else sponsored other than NDOT. So a project will list who sponsored the project. It will list an identifier number. So you can use the contract number or a designation number when you're trying to get information from NDOT. When you give us that number, whether it's a contract number or DES number, we can pull in exactly the project that you were interested in. It includes a route number, the route work type. So there's different types: added travel lanes, deck overlay or bridge overlay, reconstruction. And it describes the location, the termini points for that project, what district it's in, what type of funds it's going to use by the federal category. So that you see all the federal categories on the slides and in the yellow box. For those of you that are participate on the phone, we have various federal categories from congestion mitigation, air quality, transportation alternative programs, which include a slew of projects that can do everything from safe routes to school to bike and pedestrian and recreational trails. So a lot of different transit, a lot of different federal funding categories. And then also, you can also see the projects by phase. Sometimes when you're looking at the STIP document, you may see something that looks like it's a repeated project, but it's actually not. There might be different phases. It lists each phase as a line item. So one phase may be preliminary engineering and right-of-way. Then you see another phase where they're purchasing the right-of-way. And you might see another phase where they're actually constructing the document. And that may be in different years. So that's how you look at our STIP project listing. This is just the same. This is kind of, in our STIP document, it may be broken out by district. It may be broken out by county. So the same thing apply. And you can see all the fiscal years when a project is available, that sort from, like, for example, in the 24-2028, it lists which years, which each of those activities, whether it's a phase, will occur. And in our document, and again, this is just an example, that's why it says 2022 to 2026. In the 2024 to 2028, you're going to see that same financial summary page. Again, this document is not an accounting document. It's, these are all estimated amounts of money that we're going to spend in each fiscal year. So it has the subtotal for federal aid that will be federal highway funded projects, and also federal transit projects, and then the total of state funded projects as well, and then the total source that's going to be expended for that year. So you see in that fiscal year 22 example, there's about $3.2 billion that is programmed for that fiscal year. We'll take another break to see if we have any more questions, and I'll turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Roy. We do have another question in the chat, which I'm afraid we won't be able to answer right now, but what we will do is get an answer to this question. It's not directly related to the STIP itself, and post that actually in the STIP and try to also get the answer back to Terry. Terry's question had to do more with some traffic congestion in Salem near the Casey's, and also some road work that's being done on Highway 56 near Mulberry Street, and it's problematic from a congestion standpoint. So what we're going to do is I'm going to refer this question to our traffic engineer in the Seymour District, see if we can get some answers for you, and we will get those posted with the actual STIP itself in the final document. And if we happen to have a link to your email address, we'll directly answer your question as well. That's the only other question I see at this point, but I will note we are open for questions or comments on the STIP, actually comments and questions specific to projects. If we have the answer to the project handy that you have a question about, we will provide that. If it's something we have to do a little more research, as with Terry's comment, we'll have to get back at a later date once we get the true answer for you. So the question did come up. Before it enters the STIP, how does a project become a project for INDOT? Good question. How in the heck does a project become one? There are 4 categories, as Roy noted, or 4 asset management groups that INDOT uses, and projects generally fall within one of those 4 groups. One is mobility, the other one is bridges, then pavement, followed by safety. Safety is somewhat all-encompassing, obviously. So each of those asset management groups has an annual call for projects, and INDOT personnel then submit those applications for a project to be considered in the asset management group based on what it is. Sometimes the project may actually may show up in safety as well as pavement, because there's a problem both ways on that, and we're trying to get funded either way. So, but the more important question is, how does it get to that point where it gets to be in the application itself? That comes about through multiple sources. That is oftentimes from folks that submit questions or complaints about an area that they're having a problem with on a state highway, or our tools that we use to analyze the highways throughout Indiana to see where there's a problem that is starting to develop that will need some attention. Our bridge people do annual, semi-annual bridge inspections on all the bridges in the state. Actually, I think it's once every 3 years. And there's a bridge inspection report that is created. From that, it determines whether or not there's an immediate need, or by immediate for a bridge, it would be something in the next 5 years that needs to be dealt with, whether it's preventive maintenance, a project that could perhaps extend the service life of that bridge, or we're at the point where we need to maybe consider removing the bridge itself and replacing it. So those projects come from that source, people making comments, mayors, local elected officials making comments, addressing some things, our own analytical tools, our own eyes on the ground with our own staff that are oftentimes out on the highways themselves, and we observe situations that are occurring. We try to deal with everything we can immediately through a preventative maintenance process, but sometimes that is not enough, and eventually everything does essentially wear out. So when that happens, those applications are submitted to the asset management group that is appropriate to it. The asset management group has a scoring process that it uses for those projects, and those projects are scored, then evaluated based on the scoring of the project itself versus the budget that's been allocated for the potential year that we might be programming into. And we basically program projects that score highest to lowest. And when the budget runs out, then that's where we pretty much cease. And then we move on to the next year. The projects that are still on the table are then rolled over to the next year's asset management group to be competing with all other new projects come in. that's pretty much in a nutshell how a project becomes a project. There's probably a few more nuances than that, but that's pretty much it. Everything that we do these days is based on a data-driven process. So that scoring matters. It matters greatly. Having a project put in just because somebody wants a project won't happen, but when there's sufficient scoring data to justify the project, then it will score well enough to be funded. I hope that answers that question. I don't see any other questions in the chat at this time. I will point out that you can submit your questions in the chat in the right side of the screen itself. You can also, if you don't want to participate today, that's fine. You can submit a comment through our STIP page, a written comment where you fill out a form and hit submit, and we will see that, and we will also address that in the STIP itself. And for areas of concern that you might have for NDOT that aren't necessarily related directly to the STIP, or they could be, we do have a way that you can deal with that or submit comments, and it works very well, and it's called NDOT for You. You can go to our website, and there is a link there that you will be able to actually fill out a form and submit your question or comment. You can also call the number, and I will have to pull it up here. It is NDOT for You at 855-463-6848. That's 855-463-6848. It's also scrolling at the bottom of the screen here. And that is an excellent way to submit a question or a comment or a complaint about anything that's happening on the state highways. And I can assure you that those are cataloged and they receive a case number, and an answer is to be derived or be sent out in the mail within a short period of time, usually 3 days. If it's something that is a little more detailed and requires a little more research, you'll get a notice that we're researching a little further, but we will get an answer to you. So those are the ways that you can reach out to us. You can also reach out to NDOT as a project develops, as it goes through the environmental stage or it goes through the design stage, the early design stage. It is best to catch those comments or to submit your comments in the earlier part of the process, but there's always an opportunity near the end of the process where we're near the final design stage where you may see our prospective designs that we plan to run with the project with in the final public involvement process. You may see something that we may have missed or should be aware of. You can submit your comment then. And I personally have seen situations where that has happened in the final stages where NDOT thought it was ready to go. We received some comments, oh, wait a minute, we got to go back and reevaluate this. And there will actually, in some cases, be changes to those designs before the project is actually let. Not seeing any more questions in the chat right now. I think I will turn the floor back over to Roy or to Brandon Bergoa to move forward with the presentation or any other interactive activities that Brandon might have.
Thank you, Jay. Next, we're going to talk about how can you get involved in the planning process. So Jay did a lot of these discussed, but to get involved in the discussions, it's important that you get involved early and frequently. I know Terry Graves talked about traffic signs and trying to get people to slow down. There was concerns expressed about a school zone, intersection, and things of that nature. Oftentimes, when we have meetings, we do have them with our each of our MPOs, our district offices, and RPOs. And a lot of times, if they're great places if you stay in those areas to identify some of those issues and challenges, because a lot of times things may be missed. So you might be looking at data facts. For example, we may be looking at a project and we're looking at the traffic volumes and congestion, and we can look at speed, but there might be other items that may get missed that a motoring public or a local wouldn't know it could bring up to get into kind of the decision process to have something being done that we may not have considered. So, as a school zone, a lot of times it's hard to have people. It was mentioned that signs that track your speeds does nothing but challenges the person to see how fast they can get that number up. You know, just joking, but in some cases the road can be redesigned and you know, restriped, or sometimes if parking is alongside, that can indicate to people that, hey, maybe I should be a little bit more cautious and drive slower. But when you have a corridor that's like wide open and you feel like it's 50 miles an hour, but it's posted at 30, 35, a lot of times people drive what they feel like it should be. So, but that's a good time to get involved early. Again, if you're in the Metropolitan Planning Organization area, we have 15 of those or 14 of those across the state. MPOs, they have regular public meetings, whether that's a technical meeting, a policy board meeting, or just a public meeting to discuss projects, procedures, policies to future needs. And there's opportunities for you to participate in a lot of their early coordination meetings. MPOs do take that feedback and they relay it back to us. We meet with them on an annual basis at regional coordination meetings, and we talk about everything from project needs, land use, transportation concerns, local concerns. And so when you're getting that information to them, they are getting that information to us if it's on our if it's on our state facility. But it's also good to be aware what's going on locally as well. MPOs have more local information on planning needs. Their staffers, our staff do participate in routine MPO technical meetings. So sometimes we may be there to hear the same concern or input, and we can get that processed and passed through the chain. So, but if you're in a non-metropolitan area, you're in a rural area, sometimes there are regional planning organizations that may cover your area. And I believe in Indiana, there's only a few counties that are not covered by MPO nor a regional planning organization. So that's pretty good. In that case, you can always talk with your district office as well. They have a ton of experts there that can gauge what your concerns are. And we'll talk about some good ways to get in contact with them. But the public is notified of the STIP review and comment period in multiple ways. So we also doing media releases, legal notices, listservs. We also distribute information to these listservs and to other groups. And this includes when we're doing the 45-day comment period, which we're doing now for a new and updated STIP document that happens every 2 years, or when we're doing just maintenance of the document. We're making some changes. Typically that happens monthly or every other month. And then there's a 7-day comment period for that. We mentioned the NDOT district offices. We do have 6 district offices across the state. Our district serves as our front line in terms of coordination with many of our stakeholders and elected officials. The districts are responsible for a lot of the short-term planning. So they do a lot of technical analysis. So not every, just things for potholes, but also reconstruction of our roadways, operational improvements to improve the efficiencies of our corridor. They also do a lot of local coordination, project management. And so a lot of the construction activities that you see is usually with our district partners and experts. Districts are responsible for submitting projects and needs. Jay had mentioned the annual call for projects. So each year we talk about our STIP got that 5th year that's illustrative. That's a rolling 5th year. So each year we're doing an annual call for projects for all types of projects. And when those get constrained and approved, they'll go into our STIP document. So the districts and the program managers will also work with our MPOs for TIP amendment activities that we'll talk about in just a bit. The district office staff also participate in their technical and advisory committee meetings and board meetings at each of these MPOs. The easiest way to get in contact with your district is through, Jay had mentioned the NDOT for you. So if you type in NDOT for you or 1-855-NDOT for the number 4 U, or 1-855-463-6848. there you can get, they catalog all the comments that come in, no matter where they're coming from or what they're about. They catalog it, they give it a case number, they assign it to the right people, we document it and keep it, make sure the information is consistent. The good part with NDOT for you is that action is taking, whether that's a response or whether that's an action, you're gonna get really good performance out of this group. So that's a great way to get in comments or who to contact. Again, we have 14 MPOs across the state, and each MPO, they have their own public involvement opportunities that you can participate in, and not just for the STIP, not just for the TIP, but they have for other activities that got ongoing, as well as technical meetings, board meetings, public meetings, certification meetings. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to get involved. And together with NDOT offices, they serve as a primary source of local input into the transportation planning process. There's also opportunities for you to participate when we do have these STIP updates. We've had 8 in-person meetings throughout the state over the last few weeks. Last night was our final one public meeting, in-person public meeting, and that was in Evansville. And so, but also we have these virtual meetings, which are very productive. And so we have this one now that you're in from 1 to 3 o'clock, and then another one tonight. So tell your family, friends, we are here to answer questions. But these meetings will also be recorded and available online, as well as the presentation materials will be made available. We also send information out to each of our state libraries. It's about 236 local libraries across the state, and we'll give them flyers and information for them to post with QR codes for people who can log in to see these meetings, to see the recorded meetings, to see the STIP document and TIP document. We also have copies of the TIP documents at each of our district location office as well. But the document and comment forms can be found online at www.indot.gov/INDOT/3132HTM. You can also email to get a draft STIP, that's draft STIP at ndot.in.gov, or you can mail in your comments to what is shown on the screen, which would be, for those on the phone, would be to Indiana Department of Transportation, to Michael McNeil, who is our STIP coordinator for NDOT, and that's 100 North Senate Avenue, IGCN, which stands for Indiana Government Center North, but just IGCN, or just type in 758 in Indianapolis, 46204, and you can mail your comments in that way as well. And we do address those comments. So as we get those comments, whether it's from this online STIP comment form, whether it's through the mail or NDOT for you leaks, or by other means, those are processed. So comments and response are documented, categorized, coordinated through agencies. We do get response to many of them. And we do plug those comments in from that 45-day period and put those in the appendices of the final document, including if there's any responses to those or actions taken to those documents. We also get comments that were received from our monthly or bi-monthly amendments. So there's a 7-day comment period. When there's, since we're tight and our tips are included in our STIP by reference, when there's a change to the tip, we also do, there's a 3-day comment period for that as well. So for you to get notified of that, you can always get on our listservs, or there's other ways for you to be notified of when those documents are available for comment. Another important group, and there's 16 across the state of Indiana. And again, as I mentioned, there's probably about 3 counties that's not covered by the MPO or an RPO, which is a regional planning organization. And they serve the planning needs of small, urban, and rural areas of the state. And so their planning activities Their planning activities of RPOs are aimed at supporting NDOT central office and our district office planning, but there's 16 across the state. And I'd like to thank you for participating in our STIP virtual public meeting. And so again, you can find the document here, whether that's an online comment form or the actual STIP document at www.indot/3132HTM, or you just mail your comments to us at 100 North Senate Avenue, room N758 in Indianapolis 46204, and address that to Michael McNeil, who is our NDOT STIP coordinator. So we appreciate your time, and I will send it out for anyone to do any type of closeout, or if this may be it. But we do appreciate your time.
Hey team, this is Brandon Bergoa with NDOT. We are done here. If you have any final questions, again, the information has been presented to put your comments or concerns at the STIP comment form online. We do appreciate you all joining and participating in the polls, and we will be back online at 5 p.m. Again, we'll be running through this presentation, and we may have other questions and participants involved, but we will be here, and we'll be hoping that you're joining us. So take care, and we will see you later.